Hey, it's we're not live. This is I'm Lenny Schmidt. Welcome to Not Your Father's Show. This is a show we're here every Monday night at 6 o'clock Pacific time to talk about raising kids this generation as opposed to when we were younger and we were raised by our parents. My name's Lenny Schmidt. I'm a stand-up comic. I have two teenage daughters. And I live in the Valley here in California.
And I'm Robbins. I'm a marriage and family therapist, and I have almost a teenage daughter. She's going to be 13 very shortly, and she thinks she's going on 22.
Which basically means she's 13. Basically
She's
means
13.
she's already
Yeah.
13. Yeah, right. 100%.
For sure.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, Lenny,
Yes.
how long was it since your divorce that you started dating?
It dragged out because we were separated, so I moved out, and the divorce took like years to get done, but it was probably at least a year before I started to see someone else, and then after that it was even longer because I went to therapy right away to work on myself when I split from my ex, and I didn't want to get into a relationship with somebody and have it not work. I was pretty sure it wasn't going to work. And have to go from one relationship to another, and have my daughter see that. At the time, they were 10 and 8, and I knew other parents were getting divorced around this time too. Also, by the way, and I saw them make that mistake. I saw them get into relationships and go from one boyfriend to another boyfriend to another boyfriend, and I'm like, that can't be a good message to be sending a 10-year-old girl. So,
Absolutely.
I didn't think I should get into any type of relationship until I had my head squared away. So
You hit the nail on the head 100%. That is exactly the thing to do. And it doesn't matter if you have kids or not, but you score. I mean, good job. So there's nothing positive can grow where there's something that toxic lies, which means if you have problems that you haven't dealt with, whether it's from your upbringing, your childhood, your parents, previous relationships, and then you bring them into a current relationship, nothing's going to move forward. You're going to repeat the same problems until you fix what's going on in you.
Right.
And there's also a saying, water seeks its own level. So if you're not in a good headspace, you're going to find someone that is also not in a good headspace and they haven't healed. And that leads to more toxicity and codependency. So backing up, was that when you introduced someone to the girls, or when you started going out and venturing out on dates?
I didn't really go out. I didn't go out and venture out on dates till about a year later, and it actually coincided at the same time because I originally started seeing someone who was also a mom at the school that the kids were going at, and we were working on different school functions together. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it just kind of happened. So that's kind of what happened. But at that point, I was like, okay, well, maybe this is a good time to do it. You know, because she was. I had respect for her. She was a good mom. You know, my kids knew her kids, and so it seemed like it was a good fit at the time.
Yeah.
So it kind of coincided at the same time. But I guess one kind of fed into the other because once I saw her and once I kind of started seeing her, I was like, oh, maybe it's not a bad idea to put myself back out there again. So it kind of coincided. But after that didn't work out, I continued to date, but then didn't introduce people to my daughters for a longer time, because
Also very smart. Yeah.
yeah, because it didn't work, and I'm like, okay, well, that didn't go the way I thought it would, or or maybe it didn't feel right, or it didn't work out, and I go, and then I went right back to the original thought, which was I don't think it's a good idea. Yeah, it wasn't so much about them dating, the girls dating, but I want them to try to learn what a healthy relationship was. And I didn't feel like I was having healthy relationships at the time. Now, even though I was dating, I go, well, maybe I'll figure it out. Because then there were a couple people I dated where I was like, well, maybe there were people I dated. I'm like, there's no way I'm introducing her to the kids. Like, I had it just didn't seem like it was going to work, right?
But then there was fun dating and not the serious.
Oh, there was
dating.
a lot of fun dating going on. Yeah, there was a lot of that going on.
Which is good.
Yeah, it actually worked out great because then I was dating people that really had no interest in kids, and then it worked out, fine. So,
and then you were also on the road here and there quite a bit.
Yeah, once I started working heavy on ships, then dating completely changed for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I almost became very, very polyamorous. You know what I mean? That's just the way it was because I moved around so much. And then I was with other entertainers that lived the same lifestyle. You know what I mean? We're constantly we're never in the same place more than 2 weeks. So
right. So I mean, it's some time to go ahead and have fun. There is an important factor when you are introducing someone you're dating and where they're at to your sons or daughters. The important factor is this: you are modeling a relationship, whether you're casually dating or you're in a significant, like a serial monogamist and you want it to be serious. It's important to understand where your kids are at. And that being said, a lot of them aren't ready to see their parent with someone else, and you're modeling that relationship to say, oh, it's fine to casually date. And you're teaching that to your then 10-year-old or 12-year-old teen, and they're going to get the wrong impression of dating, and it goes with the parenting adage of do as I say, not as I do, which is sometimes very poor modeling for your child.
Plus, so much of that, those are like two different things. Those are two different aspects. I thought about that too. Like, one thing I did do too was once I started dating, or anyone I would see, I didn't really get involved with anybody. That was, I think, the first mistake I had with the first relationship I dated right out of the marriage was I dated someone who had small kids. And after a while, I was like, I don't think that's good for me, because I didn't want to be in a position where there were other kids taking away from what I had to give my kids. You know what I mean? Because already I've gone through a divorce, and the kids already feel robbed half the time. Plus now I'm traveling.
Right.
Everything was very thin, so I never wanted to take away from my kids to be able to be with other kids. So I stopped dating a lot of people at the time when my kids were little. I stopped dating women who had kids just because I was spreading myself too thin. I didn't feel fair to my kids.
Well, it's also putting the person that one dates into a role that they're not ready for. Like, okay, you're a father. By the way, you're going to start being a father figure to this kid or kids, even though they have someone else. Maybe they're in the picture, maybe they're not. There's so many factors involved in trying to orchestrate how blended families can come together. And depending on the level, sometimes it's very shallow, superficial, like, oh yeah, this is mommy's friend or this is daddy's friend or whatever it is. And then they're in and then they're out without having such a strong bond. Other times people are shopping for that mother for their kids or that father for their kids because they don't have that person in their life anymore. Sometimes it's a very bad relationship that breaks up, and one of the parents are like, either they don't have any custody or they don't want any custody, and they're checked out. Now, the real big thing is to know where your child is in regards to seeing that person with other people. For example, some kids see how bad the relationship was and like, thank goodness you guys are divorced. And like, mom, you should get out there. Dad, you should get out there and find someone that's good for you. There's those that are encouraging of it. Other times, just like you were saying, a child can feel robbed and not a priority in your life because when they are with the Disneyland dad, like you are a lot of the time, or you were at the time, when you went through your divorce. And of course you want that time earmarked for your kids where it's your priority is them, your attention is there. And then to say, oh, hey, by the way, here's this other person I'm bringing into the mix. And so now your kids aren't feeling like a priority. And you were actually like, everyone, back off, clean house. Now it's time for my kids, which is great. Most parents really need to take a look at how that's going to affect how their child feels about sharing their time with someone else.
Right. Also, what was interesting, you said something, when you're looking for another parent for your kids, I think that's not a great thing to do. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong along those lines, but I always thought, because I knew people that dated.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah, and because you're looking for someone to step in. Because first of all, there's a lot of dynamics involved where there's another dad there somewhere or another mom there somewhere, and you got to deal with.
And you have competition, yeah.
Right, you got to deal
with
however
the child
that plays
feels
out.
Torn.
Right, right. And then you got to deal with however that was playing out, whether the parent is involved, whether they're not involved, and then you become a replacement. And it's a terrible. That's a very tender position for a kid too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's very unhealthy to put a kid in that position. A lot of times with divorced parents, and we talked about this earlier, is how the kid's attention goes to, well, I like you both, and sometimes they may be able to talk to one parent over the other. Sometimes they like to have fun with one parent more than the other, which is all fine. But when there's already the dynamic of a tug of war, like, who do you like better? Wait, you went to Disneyland with your dad, but I'm the one that has to tell you to do your homework or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
So there's already that competition. When you introduce, when you have a shared custody and you introduce someone else of significance, you're at that level where it's like, oh, here is the woman that I'm seeing. Here is the, man that I'm seeing. then the kid is not only learning to get along with someone new and putting a new factor into the family dynamic, there's a competition like that the father or mother may have saying, well, they're not your real dad, they're not your real mom, or whatever it might be, and saying, well, I see you have a lot of fun with your mom's new boyfriend. Do you like him more than me? Or the mom can be asking like, so your dad's girlfriend, and throwing her under the bus and calling her names, that's not healthy either.
Right.
So it's important to not only for the parents that are seeing someone to respect the boundaries and say, you know what, you can be this kid's friend. You can be this kid's a role model, a positive role model influence, but they have a dad or they have a mom.
Right.
And you don't have to fulfill that position.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And it's a mind fuck for kids. You know what I mean? Especially if you're going from, like, I've known guys who've been in situations that got into a relationship and then they helped raise the kids, and then 3 years later they break up and they're gone and they're completely out of the kids. My brother's going through a situation like that right now. You know what I mean? And it's tough for him because the kids were little, and he stepped in, was the pseudo dad for like a couple of years, and then now he's out, and now as the kids get older, the kids don't want anything to do with them. So that's a whole difficult situation. There's a lot going on, man. You know what I mean? It's just yeah. And it's a tough position to put a kid in, because the kid is, like you said, almost everything we talk about in these shows always comes back with leading by example. Your kids are learning from everything you do. Everything you do, the way you react, whatever's going on, the kids learn from that,
For sure. And it's really hard on the kid because now they have issues from the divorce, no matter how you slice it, unless it's a really bad marriage and the kids are like, I'm glad you guys are not together. Love you both. Glad you're not together.
Right.
Or they see one thing wrong with one parent instead of the other, or sometimes they confuse. Maybe one parent doesn't say all the bad things that parent did, and they, think the parent that is actually in the right is the wrong person.
Right.
But when you have a kid that is introduced to a new person in their life, and then you take that person away because of a breakup, it's very hard on the kid. There's additional abandonment and also a sense that there's no permanency in their life. On top of that, the quasi step father or stepmother or girlfriend or boyfriend who was in that kid's life, they have no legal right to see that kid after that.
Yeah, that's what.
And I know several families that have broken up with whoever they were seeing, even if it was long term, and saying, yeah, I don't want you to reach out to my kids.
Right.
And that person's gone. I know a lot of women that were absolutely devastated because they treated their stepkids like their own, their mate's kids. And then they're like, yeah, we're broken up and I don't want you to talk to them anymore. They've been just devastated.
It's a really tough
and it's hard
position to put somebody in, man. You know what I mean? Spend all those years raising the kid and then they're gone. It's not fair.
Intense.
Plus, also from the kid's point of view, I don't think people think about this enough. If you're dating someone for 6 months or a year, let's say you're with someone for a year or two, and then they're out the door, they're gone. A year or two is a big part of a kid's life. If you're 16, 2 years is a huge chunk. That's like junior and senior year, or sophomore and freshman year, or whatever. That's a big part of your life. At that point in your life, you've only lived 16 years. At 50, you can look back at it and go, well, we were only together like a year. But that's, that's 1/16 of a 16-year-old's life. That's a...
Well, I mean, look at it this way. You don't have any real strong permanent memories that are, that you're cognizant of until you're about 5. Okay. And then I'm not saying you don't remember anything before that, but seeing the influence of every single day, it's usually after the myselination process, which is around 7, but anything before that, you have just glimpses of memory. And
the who process?
The myselination process is where there's a layer of like fats, if you will, that coat your nervous system. So all of a sudden, after the age of 7, you see kids with better coordination, and instead of running around like they're drunk.
Don't be using your big college words on this show. I don't know what.
The other thing is during that time is a cognitive process where after the age of 7, people are aware of consequence of what they do, instead of like, okay, well, I'm I'm going to put this PB&J inside the DVD player and see what happens. They're like, okay, this will break it.
Right.
So a lot of things happen at that point. So when you have people that are 16, we're saying like a solid 10 years of influence that they can remember. And at that point, 1 year is 1/10 of their life.
Right. Yeah, that's a huge chunk, man. You don't think about
especially the formative years,
Yeah. Yeah, right. Because then you think about it. You grow up and you see that, and then they're gone and have them taken out of their life. The after effect of a kid on that, it's got to be rough. I mean, it's got to be brutal. I remember my parents got divorced. I think it was it was 12. I think I want to say it was 12, right? 13, 12, 13.
Right.
And he passed away when I was 14. So, but my mom never dated and brought anybody around ever. Until the stepfather, my stepfather Dan, who came in the picture after I was gone. So she came in. So she raised 5 boys by herself for years,
Wow.
And then Dan showed up when I was gone, and Mike was either gone or on his way out, getting ready to move to California. And so Dan stepped in when the 3 little brothers were there. So Dan was the father to those 3 boys. So, but Dan was always there. But Dan was the first guy that my mom brought around any of us, So my brothers knew him as the father. That was the father they grew up with. So, and she's still with them. She's still with Dan to this day.
Oh, that's cool.
She was real strict on not. I mean, she dated. I knew as I got older, I knew she was dating. I knew what she was doing. And she was fun dating. Which was her. You're an adult. I mean, that's what you're going to do. You're working 60 hours a week, raising 5 boys. You need to go out and have fun somewhere. So
yeah, you have to let off some steam.
But there was a guy she saw that lived down the street that we never met him though. The guy lived around the block. And we never met him much. Yeah, so she was real strict about that. And one of her reasons was she didn't want to bring strange men around her boys, and she's real. I mean, those stuff that she believed in. She was very strict until she met Dan, and then that became.
I believe that's also very smart. Now let's make something clear with the separation here. It's okay if you're a single mom. I'm going to look at one aspect right now. If you're a single mom, it's okay to look for strong male role models for your kids. Not in the sense of dating, but saying, hey, here's a friend of mine, John, that is great to be around, and he'll teach you how to change a car tire or spend some time around him. That's if the father's not in the picture. And by not in the picture, I mean they're not looking at raising their child. Because anyone can be a father. It takes a lot to be a dad.
Right.
Especially like when you kink a hose and you're like, what happened to it? And you release it. I'm just kidding. But it's really important to have.
What?
You bend a hose and you're like, I don't know what happened to the water, and they look in and they're like,
oh, there we go. Okay.
A lot of people do that with the the water bottle with the penny in it, and like, oh, how did it go through? And they look in and you squeeze it early.
Oh, that's right. So I saw Gordon Ramsay get slammed on that.
Yeah, TikTok challenges.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so it's important. Male and female. So if you're a single dad, it's also good to have, a positive female role model for your daughter if you have daughters. And also to teach your son or daughter how to be a good, young man or young lady and how to be treated. All of those things are important. I have another friend that is a single dad, and he's like, it's tough dating because it's kind of like you're in high school again and you're sneaking dating, so your kids don't really catch on because you don't want to be like, oh yeah, here's another person and another person. And I'm like, why do you keep doing that? And I'm like, I just keep swiping. I don't know. And we match. And so I want to go see them. So it's the correct filter at the correct time. There are some people that have kids that are your age, your daughter's age, that are like, yeah, go out, get out there. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to be with someone. So,
yeah, Lily tells me to get out there. Anna doesn't want me to date anyone.
That's tough.
She's still like, you don't need any other women in your life, Dad. I'm like, oh, all right, okay, well, that's okay. I mean, I don't have time to get in a relationship anyway. I'm always out of town.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, which is how I ended up in the kind of like the polyamorous type thing, where it just seems to fit better. Which also is something I don't even talk to my daughters much about. You know what I mean? Because some people don't understand it, and I can't explain it to my kids. You know what I mean? You really got to have your head on straight to live that lifestyle, and be cool with it. You know what I mean? Otherwise, it's a train wreck. And so explaining that to a 17-year-old, especially Anna would just stab me in the head. She would just call me a dick.
Well, I mean, your daughters are very sweet, but they're both very different, in the sense of.
Yeah. They're like night and day. Sometimes they're the same and they're different. They're great. They're like perfect sisters, man. But like one of the things too, I do is also one of the reasons I don't bring any dating around the girls is when the girls look at me, I want them to see what they're looking for in a guy. You know what I mean? I want to also, by example, like you said, it's a good idea if you're a single mom and you date a guy that leads a good example for your sons or boys. I'm trying to give my daughters an example of what a good man's supposed to be, what a good person's supposed to be. So when they get older and they date, because they say you date your parents right away. You know what I mean? Their first big relationship is going to be with someone that's a lot like me or close to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. A Bears fan. Yeah.
Bears fan. Anna always asks me, she's like, Dad, what if I dated a Packer fan? What would you say if I dated a Packer fan? And I'm like, you would leave my house. I would never talk to your friend. If you got a game, she goes, what if I dated a guy who played for the Packers? And I said, well, if you got me tickets, I think I would be okay with it.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, it's tough with the dating. I mean, that's one thing where you and I are I'm not there yet because my daughter's not dating. And
yeah, she's just 12 or, she's barely 13. Lily started young, bro. Lily started when she didn't really start, but her attraction to boys was there when she was around 13, and it was heavy.
Right.
Where you're like, okay, calm down. I had a lot of talk to her. Okay, slow down. You're not dating.
Yeah.
You're too young, blah, blah, blah,
Well, there's been on my side, she's interested in boys. But she also, the good thing about being a strong influence in my daughter's life and spending a lot of time with her as much as I can is that she knows there's a lot of idiots out there. And even though she gets a little boy crazy, like, oh my gosh, she's cute. I'm like, okay, tell me about him. And she's like, sometimes a little afraid and sometimes she talks to her mom more, which is fine. That's okay.
Right.
But other times she's like, yeah, he's a tool. I'm like, okay, we have a good benchmark of standards. That's good.
Yeah.
That's
Both my daughters think all boys are idiots, too. They're like the same way. For the most part. Like Lily has a boyfriend now who's a really good kid, and I like him. I've met him a couple times.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, and they're going to come over here for dinner for Christmas Eve night, him and his family.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah,
that's
great.
great.
Family stuff. Yeah, it's really great, actually. But he's a good kid. He's a good kid. My daughter always looks for someone that not only she treats him really well, but he also treats all women really well. Like they have big functions, they hang out, and he makes sure all the girls get home safe, and they have Ubers, and everyone's taken care of. I mean, he's a good guy. So,
oh, that's great.
Yeah,
and
so
this
that's
is Anna's. Wait, this is Anna's or Lily's boy?
This is Lily's boy.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's fantastic.
Good. And Anna, every guy, she was out on a date a little while ago, but she's like, oh, he only wanted one thing, and I knew immediately. And then she's out. She's like, I can't. She's real picky. But both my kids are real picky, actually. So, which is great. I'm actually not bummed about that. I'm like, oh, good. I'm glad you're a little picky. That's, that's a little encouraging. Makes me happy.
Yeah. Which is, I mean, a whole nother topic, like who your daughters are going to start dating and what kind of influence.
Oh,
but back to being the dating influence that you have in your kid's life. It goes both ways, whether you're married or whether you're single and looking to date, you are a role model for your kids. And what I mean is you're modeling a behavior. So if your marriage is not doing great, then you're saying this is what a relationship should be. If you're single and dating and you have a revolving door, you're also saying this is what dating should be like.
Right.
So either way, you're making an impression on your child.
Yeah, and another thing, I don't know if we brought this up or mentioned it, we talked about putting someone in a position where they have to replace the other parents, like the other father or the mother. But to flip that around a little bit, also, you can't expect your kids to just address someone as the other parent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I see a lot of parents will make that mistake where they go, well, that's your mom now or whatever. And they're like, no, it's not. And that can be, there's different ways to handle that. When there's parents that are angrily go, because they'll bury the other parent. And they go, this is a better parent to you. You got to understand your child still has a connection with the original parent, whether you like it or not.
Yeah. You may not like that person that you divorced, but your child will always,
Yeah. For the most
they'll
part,
always
90%
love
of
their
the time,
parent.
they'll always look up to that parent, whether they're a good parent or not. You know what I mean? I mean, if even if it's a bad parent, every kid looks at that first parent and still reaches out to them. They're the ones
Absolutely.
that they expect.
Absolutely. There was a woman I dated for several years that had children prior, and they were young. And when she introduced them to me, she was kind of like pushing them on me, like, "Oh, here, isn't this so cute?" And I told her, I said, "Relax. Don't push your kids on me. Let me like them and love them for who they are. Not because they're your kids, but let me get to know them individually and have my own connection with them, my own relationship with them. So
Right.
that way it's not dependent on, I like them because they're your kids,
Oh, that's smart.
that I can like them for who they are."
Yeah, that's a good way to handle it, right? Because you got to have a relationship with them. You're right.
And it's also respecting that they do have, they do have a father, and I have to respect that relationship, just as the relationship I had with them, it's individual. They're not tied together.
Right. All right. That makes sense. That's good.
Yeah.
I like that. That's good. All right. I think we're good. Are we good? I think we're done. Are we done?
Yeah. Any
think we covered
questions?
everything,
Write
man.
us in. NotYourFatherShow@gmail.com.
I didn't hit any of that stuff yet. Boom. You can feel free to email us at notyourfathershow@gmail.com.
It's
hit us,
right there.
It's right above us, right above my head, right there. Yeah. Feel free to contact us and ask us any questions that you might possibly have. And we will be back every Monday at 6:00.
Don't forget to like, follow, and share.
Yeah, like
on Instagram
video,
too.
all that stuff. Yeah, on Instagram too as well. Very much so. All right, thanks, and we'll see you. We'll see you next week.
Next week.
All right.